and welcome to the absolutely stunning Loch Maree in the Scottish Highlands. Now I'm up here today basically because I'm en route to Gairloch, because tonight I'm going to be photographing a lighthouse just north of Gairloch as part of my lighthouse photography mission. But to sort of make the most of the day, we've been stopping off at various locations en route, scouting out places that I potentially may come back to in a few weeks' time when the autumnal leaves are beginning to be in their optimum. And one of these places I've stopped off at that I won't be returning to, which is why I'm trying to make the most of being here, is Loch Maree. Now this is a loch I've wanted to photograph for a long time because we've got these stunning native trees dotted all along the loch's edge, and we've also got the iconic Scottish mountains in the distance as well, which adds some real interest to the scene. Now the weather today is not the best, it's quite overcast, but we are getting these little bits of pockets of light that are very briefly and very fleetingly going over the landscape and lighting up the mountains and the trees around me. So what I'm doing basically is looking for some really sort of intricate photographs of the trees with the beautiful mountains behind them, and trying to get an image of that basically to showcase a sort of fine art style photograph and encompassing the interest here. The iconic Scottish mountains with the native beautiful trees that surround them. Now before we start the proper photography for today, I just wanted to say that one of my viewers called Guy, a very kind Guy, has sent me over this Peak design strap, which means there's no more fiddling about me trying to get my strap on and off my camera between doing a handheld shoot and a landscape photography shoot with my tripod. So from now on, all I've got to do is clip these off and I can begin shooting with my tripod at ease. So huge thank you to Guy for sending me that. It really does mean a lot. Now because it's the middle of the afternoon and we've also got a lot of overcast skies today, the light right now isn't very pleasing. I'm hoping that we're going to get one of those openings in the clouds which is going to put some of the light on the mountains and the scene around me. That's my hope. But to be fair, today the main thing I'm wanting to do this afternoon to make use of this time is for me to start looking more intricately at the scenes around me. Now, as the majority of you will know, I'm much more of a coastal photographer as opposed to a mountain or a woodland photographer. But from time to time I do like to go out and photograph different genres of photography because it really challenges me and it also opens my eyes up to different parts of the landscape and allows me to have different experiences. And now that we are beginning to go into autumn, I really want to make the most of autumn this year. I really want to. Every year I say it and I never fully utilise the colours, but this year I'm determined to do so. So what I'm doing today basically is training my eye to look for the more intricate fine art style images within a woodland and loch setting, so that in a few weeks time when the conditions are at their optimum for autumn leaves and autumn colours, I kind of have had a bit of practice in this style of photography. So just now what I'm doing is walking around this loch and pointing out, or picking out should I say, some trees that are going along the loch's edge that I can then zoom in on and really hone in on and create some sort of interest around. So the first image I have framed up just now is this shot here, which basically sees these sort of new growing trees on the loch's edge, which are being framed nicely with some other trees around them, and we've got a beautiful mountain behind it with a waterfall that I framed quite close to the centre of my image. Now, as I say, the light's not great just now, and this image is also quite difficult to frame because we've got heathers and, as I say, other trees intersecting the shot, which means really trying to hone in on what I want to shoot, which is these new growing trees and the waterfall and the mountain behind. Is quite difficult to get my camera bang in a good position so that I'm cutting out a lot of the distractions that are trying to creep into the corners of my image. But nevertheless, I'm going to try just now. Hopefully the light will come out a little bit better in the next 10-15 minutes or so and we'll be able to get a decent image from this beautiful scene before me. Now, one thing you really have to be mindful of, I think, when you're doing this style of photography, especially when you're zooming into a scene and you're really sort of magnifying certain objects, is watching where those objects intersect the horizon. Now, this image is really standing out to me, but it's also incredibly tricky because, unfortunately, because we've got a lot of these foliage and all that going around the image, positioning my camera in a position or a sort of creating a composition where the trees that I'm really trying to focus on aren't intersecting the horizon line is really, really difficult, because as I'm, you know, positioning my camera up and down and trying to control that and change that, we're then ending up with things in the image that are distracting, or we're ending up with the branch overhanging intersecting with the trees themselves, which is more messy and more disinteresting to the eye, or displeasing to the eye, than if I was to put the trees that I'm photographing over the horizon itself. So if anybody points that out, the fact that these trees are intersecting the horizon and it's not a great thing, it's literally one of the only compositions I can do here where I can really showcase the waterfall, the mountain and the trees that are really interesting me without having other trees and overhanging branches intersecting the trees of interest. So I guess the point I want to make here is there's so many rules in photography, and the majority of the time we try and stick to the things that work well or make images pleasing to the eye, but sometimes you have to break those rules, and in fact breaking those rules can often be where you create the most interesting and creative images. And I'm hoping this shot here will kind of prove that in some ways. So I've just come about 20 metres over from where I just took the last shot, and I found this shot here. So I don't know if you can see, but there's this driftwood, sort of old ancient bit of driftwood tree going on here, and behind it, again I don't know if you can see, but behind it there's this waterfall going up into the mountains. And what I thought would work really well is using this old driftwood piece of, I'm guessing it's a bit of ancient like dead pine tree or something that's floating in the water. I thought it would be really good foreground interest, which would then add interest to showcase the waterfall that's coming down the mountain. The only problem is we've got this tree that overhangs, and no matter where I sort of position my camera, I can't cut that out of the photograph. Sorry, I'm getting eaten alive by midges. I can't cut that out of the photograph. But what I've discovered is actually zooming out and doing a wide angle shot, which is not what I wanted to do here. I wanted to zoom in and get a really nice zoomed in shot of this, but by zooming out and doing a wide angle shot I can include a lot of the pebbly things here, pebbly stones that act as good foreground interest. I'm still able to get that tree in the centre of my frame with the mountains then in the background, which adds a good layered effect, a good sort of foreground, middle ground and background, and in many ways tells a story. Tells a story from one side of the loch to the other side of the loch, and showcases the whole story of the loch, you know, all these inlets of water coming in and creating this loch, and then all the remnants that surrounds it and the life that's been, you know, grown from the outskirts of this loch. So this is a good example, I think, of how messing around with different focal lengths can often create results that you weren't expecting. Like I say, I went into this shot visualizing a zoomed in shot, and actually the wide angle is a hell of a lot better. So without further ado, let's take this image. that last image, I noticed that the first image I was taking, that the light had come out again and was illuminating the landscape. So I've just ran back and taken a few shots of that first image that I took again, because I was only 20 meters away and the light was incredible. So I'm going to showcase with you now that second image I've taken of this scene, and then compare it to the image I took about half an hour ago. Exactly the same shot, but just with different lights, and hopefully it will showcase to you how light really can bring a photograph to life. And I'm really glad actually that I ran back and got that shot for a second time, because I think it looks much better than the first shot. Just having that bit of sunlight on the landscape illuminating it makes all the difference. So that's just a quick video while I had a few hours to kill on my way to this lighthouse. A great opportunity, I think, especially now we're getting into autumn. You don't have to restrict yourself to sunrise or sunset. You can get out during the day, any time of the day, and practice your fine art style photographs so that when autumn is in full bloom, you can really make the most of it. As always, I want to say a huge thank you for watching, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you all again next time.